Ready whenever you are, sir.
There we go. All right, it's 6:04, and I guess we'll call the meeting to order and see who's here. And roll call. Mr. Haddad? Here. And Mr. Mudge? Here. Mr. Diaz? Here. Mr. Shands? Here. Mr. Beersner? Here. Brian is... Right. John L. Holly, if you're here, you're hiding, and come on up. All right. Okay. If we will, let's do the pledge to start the meeting.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nobody took a knee. That was okay. All right. Let's see if there are any citizen comments. Citizens have the opportunity to make some remarks, and we're getting a no. Okay. All right. I guess we'll start then with the business items. The approval of the minutes from January 11th. Have you had a chance to look at those? Any folks who find any corrections or errata or anything in there? All right. All right, there's a motion and a second. Oh, Albert, Mr. Haddad, second. All right, thank you. All right, and I guess let's move right into the Quarry report. Yep. This is very confusing with the name tags. There we go.
For doctors, we allow 15 minutes, sir. You're gonna appreciate it.
Okay, we're just going through everything. We're just getting reports done.
Hello? Yes.
Okay.
Can everyone hear me okay? Is it okay if I take my mask off to speak? Hello, everyone. My name is David Lawner with Vibertech, and today we're going to discuss the homeowner concerns from January and February of 2021. Can you all see the map in front of you that's on the screen? Okay, great. This is a location map of the blasting that was done for the last 2 months in the Hanson Surtex Quarry here in Garden Ridge. You can see over there, I don't know if we're using the view from her computer, so I don't think my cursor is going to work on your screens, but I just wanted to highlight the areas over there in the upper west part of the quarry and also the Aggie Pit areas where the blasts were concentrated the last 2 months. Oh yes, got a point. Thank you. And you can see that there was 2 base pit locations down here back in late January and early January, but predominantly the blasting was concentrated over in this section of the quarry. And then in the map you can see the seismograph locations for the compliant seismographs. We got the Michaels, Harkins, Warden Prop Line, Warden Residence, City Prop Line, and Holly Residence. So those are where the seismographs are located. This is the, oops, don't see, I hit the wrong computer button. How do I change screens? Cat? This one. Oh, that's the, there we go. Thank you so much. That's a laser pointer. This is the USBM chart for February and January of 2021 with those seismograph locations. And you can see that everything was underneath the compliance level. I can read out the data that the highest peak particle velocity in January was at the Warden residence, a .133 inches per second on January 8th. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, the highest reading in January, and it would be represented by the small blue highest point there, which I know you're not seeing too well. This guy right there. This Warden prop line. 0.133 inches per second on January 8th from the Aggie Pit location. And the highest PPV in February was a 0.205, located at the Warden property line on February 24th. And the blast also was located in the Aggie Pit that particular day. This chart represents the air overpressure, the highest readings recorded in January and February. And the highest air overpressure was 117 decibels recorded at the Warden property line on January 8th from the Aggie Pit North B location. And the highest air overpressure in February was 112 decibels at the Warden property line on February 3rd, also from an Aggie Pit blast location. This is a map of the January complaints. We try to simplify this year, or this month. Instead of having both months combined, we just broke them into 2 separate months, and we try to simplify the information here. So you can see in the map, the yellow pin from January 8th would represent the concerns that came in from the Diaz residents on 1A to Harkins residents, Ms. Hayslip, and Ilona Thomas and Shane Thomas. And then on January 21st, we had some more concerns come in from the Aggie Pit West B location, and we had 2 concerns come in from the Thomas, is Shane and Ilona Thomas. And then there was one more blast up there. It's in the top pit of the quarry. It's in a red pin from 128, Pond 4, Level 1, North A. And we had a concern come in from Ms. McAllister Bacon for that particular location. And this is the February complaint map. Again, not too much here, that's good news. Just 2 concentrated shots. One was on February 3rd, the other was on February 24th. The February 3rd shot was in lime green, and you can see McAllister Bacon and Kelly had concerns on that date. And the Aggie Pit shot from February 24th had concerns come in from Ms. Hayslip and Mr. Harkins. Yes, sir. The actual shots themselves?
The report on the shop location, reading, all that. I see the January 20th table.
You're not referring to this table, are you?
No, that's the
You're talking about the detail table?
Excuse me, gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
I emailed them to you, but I did not print them out, so you do not have a hard copy of the February shots.
And Kat, I had that electronically on that flash drive if we need to look at it. If you wanted to pull it up.
Yeah, I do have them in the packet virtually, so if you do want to look at them, I can pull them up.
So we do have that data here, but yes, I don't think it's in front of you right now. Okay, moving on. So if we want to go into the individual concerns here. Let's see here. Back on January 8th, Karen Diaz had a concern of a blast from the Aggie Pit North B location. Key comments were the blast sent 2 separate waves through the house. In addition, a family member was outside on the driveway at their vehicle when they felt the blast. They did not request contact from a Quarry personnel, but the shot itself that day was in compliance with Ordinance 34, as were all the shots in the last 2 months. This is the location of the blast from January 8th, and the Diaz residence is highlighted with the yellow house, and the nearest compliance seismograph between the 2 was the Warden residence. And there's a reading from the Warden residence, which was almost 2,900 feet away from the blast. And it's like I got a 0.133 fact, that was the highest reading in January, was that particular one right there. On the same shot, January 8th, Shane Thomas said, one huge blast that shook pictures on the walls of my home. I heard my glass rattle in my kitchen cupboard. My 3-year-old house has developed cracks in several rooms. He did request Quarry contact, and I did reach out to him to speak to him. This is the location of Mr. Thomas's house, and the nearest seismo, that compliance seismograph that registered any readings was the Michaels residence. And that reading is located here, 0.065. And the frequency was rather low, but not too low, 13.2. This is Mr. Harkin's concern from also the same blast, January 8th. At the indicated time, the house shook excessively and created additional cracks and separation. And this is one of the rare times when the compliance seismograph is actually in the yard of the person with the concerns, because he had a seismograph in his property, and this is the reading from that seismograph. He was located just over 4,000 feet away from the blast. So you got a 0.04. Mrs. Hayslip had a concern with the same blast. These blasts are getting longer and lasting longer. What is going on? They also are becoming more frequent. Entire house shook and rumbled. I could hear the window shake and cause my sleeping pup to wake and bark. And this is again, with the location of her house, the Harkins seismograph is the same one that we use for the readings of that particular location. So again, it would be the same data here as was for Mr. Harkins. Moving on to the January 21st Aggie Pit West B shot from Shane Thomas. Concern was that shook the house again. It's unbelievable. I will send pictures of our 2-year-old home that has cracks in the inside wall of our home. And again, he requested contact and we reached out to him. Once again, going from his house to the nearest compliance seismograph that triggered would be the Michael residence seismograph. And a reading there, 0.065. It's the highest PPV. Let's see here. This did that one. Okay, actually, that other one might have been 1.8. This is the actual location of the 121 shot. Might have had a duplicate slide in there. This is actually the reading from that Michael's residence seismograph for 121. And pretty high frequency there to keep that number low. His mother had the same complaint on the same date. Loud boom, my house shook. This is getting ridiculous. Again, we reached out to her. She rated that a 5+. And again, using the same seismograph from 121 to Michael's residence. And this is the reading from that seismograph.
Let me ask you a question on those, only because, is this the first time that we've had people clear on the other side of Bat Cave with those kind of responses?
Last time, we
Yeah.
had the same unique transfer to the Thomases and folks on the other side.
Yeah.
And we were determining that it was kind of corresponding with the Aggie Pit blast, that we were getting newer
Okay.
impact.
Okay, but this is the second round of those where the...
Yes, sir.
That's, because that's a long, long way off.
Yes. Yeah, he's about, I think, sometimes he's 8,000 to 10,000 feet away.
Yeah, almost 2 miles. Gosh, okay.
On moving to January 28th, Linda McAllister Bacon had a concern from a pond 4 level 1 north, a blast. She said she was on a Zoom call meeting when the major blast happened, the whole house shook. And locating where she's at, and then we used the Harkins seismograph as the compliance record. And that was a no trigger at that distance. So again, she's behind him further west, and the seismograph did not trigger, and the seismograph was at 6,140 feet away from the blast. No trigger means the vibration did not reach 0.02 inches per second. And the decibels did not go above 133.
David, sorry, before you go any further,
I didn't hear you. Did somebody speak with Miss Shane Thomas and,
Yes.
and,
Alona
Yeah.
Thomas? Yes, yes.
you did?
Yes, sir.
And, well, Meg, Louis asked here.
He is venting his frustration at these shaking continues, what's being done with it. We offered him previously to put a seismograph in his yard. He declined that and just told him that we continue to monitor and that everything's in compliance. So,
Both were the same?
Yes.
They offered them both?
yes, yes. They both did not want
Thank you.
anything on the property. Moving to February, McAllister Bacon had a concern here about an Aggie Pit West shot. Her comments are, shook the whole house. The breezeway of our 1985 home has begun to separate from the home. I can't but wonder if the blasting has caused the foundation issues. Olshan has already proposed a repair, but they rarely do any work in Garden Ridge due to the soils. And I reached out to her. This was, again, the Harkins seismograph was the location to be nearest to her. That was a compliant seismograph. And the reading from that shot was looks like a .03 trigger, and frequencies, pretty good average frequencies. So it's the low frequencies that make the vibrations feel a little bit more sustained. So Blaster's doing a good job of trying to get the frequencies higher. It's a good shot of that. And that seismograph was 26 feet from the blast. We had a concern also from the same blast come in from Mrs. Tara Kelly. Her comment was very large blast, at least 3 seconds of shaking. And she's just across the street from us here, so we used a city property line seismograph for the compliance seismo. You can see the blast up there in the pit. And the readings from that location were still pretty low there, 0.035 at 2970 feet. Mrs. Hayslip had a concern from February 24th, an Aggie Pit West B shot. The entire house shook and rumbled. And she's over there, I guess that's Back Cave Road. And so we looked at the micro seismograph, and we've got these readings here, still well below the USBM cutoff level.
Go back and see where the.
There it is.
Mm-hmm. Over here. So you can imagine the vibrations is traveling this way.
And that's on the other side of the Galaxy?
Yes, sir. Just west of, yes, sir.
And, is it like the Woodland Oaks or whatever that new development is?
Yes,
Yeah.
the woods.
Yeah, they are.
So that was the reading from the Michaels seismograph. Mr. Armando Diaz had a concern from the same shot, the Aggie Pit West B shot on Feb 24. The effect of the blast lasted about 3 seconds. House walls shook and felt a vibration through the floor. And you see his location in relation to the proximity of the blast, and then the warded residence seismograph between the two. Now that is a pretty noticeably different looking event report. I think the frequencies are a little lower here, which is why that L wave, you see the red wave at the top, is so spread out. That's what happens when you get a lower frequency, but everything was still within compliance and pretty close there to the shot, about 2380 feet. But there's the reading from that location. And then Mr. Harkins had a concern on the 27th. Actually, his concern came in on 27th, but it's related to the February 24th blast. So the same as the other two. An extended event that shook the windows and glass on February 24th. And so, again, he had the seismograph in his yard at that time. It's since been moved to the Bauer residence. So this was the last shot Harkins recorded at his location. And his reading there at his house from over 3,400 feet was 0.033. And then this last comment was not really related to a blast per se. It was just Mr. Hayslip's concern that there were some new noises consistent for what we believe are coming from the quarry. Sound is nonstop and especially disruptive at night when trying to sleep. There's a constant hum and rumbling sound with peaks of increased intensity. So he was just concerned about general activity coming from the pit. And if there was any specific questions about that, I'm sure Pat could answer them for you, but since that was not blast related, we did not tie it into any seismograph. That might have been after the ice storm, so it might have been the Quarry was just trying to catch up on some downtime if they were working on the weekend.
It's interesting that the both Mr. Diaz and Ms. Eslip, the same street. I don't know how far they are apart.
Mr. Diaz on Gunther Grove,
Yes, sir.
and who is the other?
Armando Diaz.
Oh, well, they're married. That's his wife, right? Yes. Yeah, it's the same house. It's a Diaz residence, so just depends on who submitted the paperwork.
Same wave.
Same way. It's like, who was home that day? Kat, you want to show that other display, the spreadsheet that we had opened up? This is, gentlemen, this is another format that we created just this last 2 months to show another way of presenting this data. Going from the top there, it just says Hanson Surtex Quarry complaints for the last 2 months. Total number of complaints were 13 individuals for a total number of 15 shots. In the Aggie pit, of those 13 concerns, 12 of the 13 complaints came from blasting or activity related in the Aggie pit, and the Pond 4 Level 1 got one of the complaints. Going back to the Aggie pit, the 12 complaints, of those, the Thomases, Shane and Alona, had 4 of them themselves, of those 12. So then we just broke it down below that. You can see the Aggie pit concerns, and you can see the distances from the house, the concerner house, to the blast. And then moving to the right, you see the nearest seismo PPV, compliance PPV. So that would be, again, Warden property line or Michael's residence or something to that effect. And then you can see the distance of that seismograph from the concern. So for example, if Mrs. Diaz was 3,900 feet away, the nearest seismograph that recorded the data would have been 2,895. But of those blasts all concerned in January, you can see that there are only 2 blasts that had the most concerns, January 8th and January 21st. And then likewise, for February, the same situation. There were 5 concerns, but there was actually just 2 complaints within that realm. One from McAllister Kelly and one each from Hayslip, Diaz, and Harkin. So this is just another way of showing this data. And Kat, can you just slide down just a little bit just to show the very bottom there was McAllister's, Bacon's concern there, and that was a no trigger. So this is the same data we just looked at. It's just more of a data-centric form, which we can continue creating these if the Board of Commission would like to move over to that direction.
Is that in our packet?
I don't think so, but we can begin.
It's very handy, yeah, very handy.
Is this good? Yes, sir, okay, absolutely. We will include this. Okay, great, fantastic.
Is it possible this monthly report, can we get this in spreadsheet format as well?
I believe so. You're talking about the shot list of all the data? Yeah. We're talking about
I'm sorry, no, what was that question?
all the blasts for the entire 2 months. And did they get that also in electronic format, the one that Karen emailed out?
Do you guys not get that Excel?
No, we just get the PDF.
Okay, sure.
I'd like to get the Excel file
Okay.
as well.
Excel format?
You want it in Excel? Sure. We typically have it in a PDF, that way it remains unedited, but we'll send the Excel to you. Obviously, just, I would ask you don't adjust any of the numbers.
No, right.
Okay, if you would like the Excel, we could make that happen, sure.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. Thank you.
Just ask.
The PDF altogether?
Just ask.
I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody, but if PDF is fine with everybody else, that's fine.
I mean,
But I'd
it's
still
one
like
way
to see the Excel.
It's one way to make sure that we have a consistent document that
Sure.
comes from them.
Sure.
But if you get in addition to that, the PDF,
That's fine.
and, or have the PDF and then in addition to that, have
Yeah.
the Excel. That's what I meant to say.
I may take, not to accuse anyone in any way, I may, when I send the Excel, I might remove like an official title off of that, just to make sure someone gets a wild hair, prints it off, and it's something that just, if there's a tiny edit in there, I want to make sure that, you know, our PDF is the stamped copy that we send in. That's our official documentation.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
And that's more respectable, I believe.
Yeah, and if you guys want the Excel to do whatever with, that's okay too, but
That way, each individual person could actually sort it and see what they're
Sure.
getting into.
Sure, that's okay.
But, you know,
But
they
we
have
use the
that one to
PDF.
go.
The PDF is the official document. So
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's fine. Sure, you can do that.
One quick question. That spreadsheet that I just showed a moment ago, would you guys prefer that we just simply go only to this from now on, or do you guys still want to show the original one that had the maps?
I like the short format.
Yeah, I like them both.
You like them both? Okay.
And especially if we happen to have somebody here that is not used to this,
Okay.
that graphic picture is a good description of what's going on. There's the blast, there's the seismograph, here's your home. I think that's very useful.
Okay.
And the spreadsheet shows that same data, but it's just data. I think the pictures are good, especially for idiots like me. And I like having this format to look at
Okay.
the details of each of the complaints in one format. I like that.
Can the procedure be, at the next meeting, we start off with this Excel? And then if there's concerns or we want to go in a more in-depth, we will have the presentation ready. But if everybody's content with doing analysis on this, we just don't, so we'll leave that up for you guys.
I usually want to discuss it, but I think that would be fine to start with this, and then if we need to drill down.
We'll go to the presentation.
Comments? Jerry?
I'm now confused. Are we?
He's asking.
There we go. We are still going to get the layout, though. We're still going to see, here's the blast, here's Shanethal, here's Batcave, like you've always done.
If you'd like to,
We're still gonna get the photographs or whatever, map from Google, wherever you get it. But we're going to still have that.
If you request that, we were asking if you would prefer we could
That
only,
right
yes.
there.
We
Yeah.
were hoping we could provide you only the Excel spreadsheet, but we can also still create these if that's what the Quarry Commission.
I need a visual,
Okay.
to say, okay, where is it and where was the seismograph compared to?
Absolutely. Okay. Well, that's all the information I have for January and February. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Yes, sir.
How often do you change the locations of these seismographs? Do you always leave them at the same residence?
One of them is what's called the floater, and that was the Harkins residence. It's now been moved to the Garden Ridge Drive across the street to Mrs. Bauer's residence. So that could rotate as homeowners requested, and the Quarry Commission approves that it be moved. And generally, it can stay for a minimum of 1 month, but sometimes they can stay for, in the Harkins residence, a minimum of 2 months. And, but the others are all permanently,
What
still there.
about, have you guys thought about putting something out on Batcave Road? I think
We-
it's doubtful if it would trigger, but it
We
would
had
put the
one-
rest, a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, we did have one at Park Lane Park, if y'all recall, it came up in the last meeting. But it never received any triggers related to blasting. That's why when we were looking at the Thomas's residence, we kept going all the way over to the Michael's seismograph to get data, because the one that was closest to his house was not even triggering. So we did have one on Batcave Road in Park Lane Park.
You can see in that map.
Yeah, not that one. Go to one that's got the Thomases on it. Maybe a few more slides up. Another one. One more. Okay. Try again. I can see the park, but there we go.
There you go,
Okay,
there
so, yes, right?
That tree.
Trying to get the, this little tree right here represents Park Lane Park. And we had a seismograph there from mid-December through, I believe, all of January. And it never triggered related to the blasting, so we would go back to the Michael's residence for the data.
And we have reached out to the Thomases to put a seismograph at their house, and they've declined. So as far as getting onto any private property or whatever, where that tree represents, that's just a park. That's why we had our unit there.
Does that answer your question?
Anything else?
Is there any way to tell what kind of materials were being blasted when the Thomases, or, you know, the ones that were way off on the other side of Batcave Road, what kind of material was being blasted from the pit? Is it something like that? Maybe the depth of it or something like that? I'm looking for a reason why they're sensing this and
Right.
nothing's picking it up.
And perhaps the quarry personnel can expand on this, but I don't know the details of the material, but it just seems to be that particular location. Just like the base pit used to rattle your house the most, or other people were affected by upper 3 or whatever. The Aggie pit is a newer location, and it's a newer, like a sub pit within the pit. And it's not that it's closer to the Thomases than some of the others, but for some reason that seems to be the one location that affects them the most. And prior to this year, they were not shooting in an area called the Aggie pit. So the Thomases were aware of the blasting, but something just changed in 2020 when that location started.
Have you by any chance looked to see if the soil in their area is different than others? I remember when for a while in Trophy Oaks, we had a real problem because some of the homes were in an area where there's a lot of clay, and they tended to really feel it more than other people that were nearby that were not in that same clay area. Have we looked at that?
Why don't you come up here?
Okay. That's why it's always our practice to get the seismograph as close to the structure as we possibly can. Because you are right, the soil types, the hills, the topography in here changes like you can't believe. All we can say conclusively is at Park Lane Park, we know we're not getting triggers. But I couldn't speak to the specific soil down there. And without being on the property, we just don't know it.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything else? I can field questions. I've done it before.
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
So, Jerry.
Anything else from me, gentlemen?
Anything else?
Dave, yeah, you're good. You're good.
Okay, the location and the placement of the monitors, 5B3. Okay, location and placement, and the number of monitors and the matters related to monitoring. So one thing that came up earlier in the year, I asked the city council, is there anybody here that would like to have a monitor placed? So that's why one monitor, the Haskin monitor, has been moved to the Bauer residence, okay? That happened on March 1st. So now we're waiting to get data from that. We've had a blast or two, maybe, and basically the monitor has had no trigger so far either, but this was in March. So starting March 1st, that's when that data is gonna come in.
And where was the Bauer again?
It's on Garden Ridge Drive,
Garden Ridge Drive.
8947.
Okay. So that was done. Any questions? Any other places that anyone can think of where any residents is willing to have a monitor placed? Nope. Well, that's all I have on that one. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Nope. He just went over the February and March blasting material.
With that item 4, did anything come up at the city council meeting?
No, we
Okay.
didn't have a meeting per se, so they didn't have any questions or concerns because we didn't have anything to feed or give to them either, so. Are you thinking we missed something? Maybe we should have had something?
No, I was there,
I know,
and then, but I left before your turn came up. I left after about 2 hours, and
that's okay.
so I had to get a call, got a call, had to leave. But okay, I just wondered if something came up later, because I knew you're always on the, aren't we always on there for a report if needed?
Yes.
Isn't that what happens at the council meeting?
Yes.
And it just wasn't needed, so super, that's good.
Chairman Hawley,
Yes.
the city council appointed your new quarry commissioner in February, Mr. Birchner.
That's right. But I was just gonna. In February, wow, I apologize for that. Have we welcomed our new commissioner?
Go ahead. Say hello.
Hello. So, yeah, so that did happen. Okay. You're on the next page, right? Okay. 5C1. Anything there? Ordinance 210. All of the commissioners, you know, you guys need to take some time and go to a city council meeting at least twice in a year, I think it is, right? So, Commissioner Mudge has been there, Commissioner, I'm gonna remember your name.
Shans.
Mike.
Mike.
Shans.
Mikey.
Okay, they've both been there, so you guys, if you have time, show up, see what they have to say, and
Cat's
you
gonna
can possibly learn a little bit. Yes,
So sorry. For 5C1, for the discussion and accept the resignation of Commissioner Haddad and the interview for that Quarry Commission potential vacancy, that individual actually contacted me earlier today stating that he no longer could be on the Quarry Commission due to his scheduling with work. And you do have his email in front of you as well, sir. So those business items can no longer take place unless Commissioner Haddad still wants to turn in his resignation formally.
As I mentioned to you in my letter and also to Nancy, I would gladly continue to serve until you find a replacement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Under Rollins.
Good on you.
All right. And that's basically why I didn't want to bring it up, because he said that a long time ago, he's gonna stay. Okay?
So that takes care of
That
items.
takes care of 5.
Well, okay.
You have questions?
No, I was just going to say that just to formally recognize our new commissioner, David Bersner, and thank him for joining us, and hope that you aren't scared away by the complexity of everything we've got to do up here.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. With any luck, you'll be able to add a little more complexity to it. Never know. So, good. Glad to have you, sir. So now, 5D. Somebody in the packet here, come on. Last month, we were given a documental review. Did everyone get a chance to look at that?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Are we-
still reviewing
Are
it?
we- are you?
I mean, have
wanting
you
to-
looked at it?
I have not either, and for this now.
I'm giving you a
But to
minute.
keep the conversation going,
No, I'm gonna give you a minute.
okay, there are a couple of comments that I think do, or sound correct to me from the 8507, but I'm on, they don't have page numbers, never mind. Geez, I don't know how to tell you which one it is. But let me just read it to you. They're talking about the strain and impact on houses, and it says, since these impacts and vibrations, since these occur over many years daily during the life of the structure with greater effect, there is little vibration will do within the regulatory limits. I'm not exactly sure what that means. It's on USBMIR 8507 and structure responsiveness. I don't know. I wish they would number these pages so we could discuss them anyway.
I'm happy to.
You know what that one is, Nick? Okay, you know what I'm
Yep.
talking about?
Yep.
Okay.
So that comment comes down as an accumulation of everything that your house is going to feel during its lifespan. From when the concrete is initially poured till the day you move out of it, or for whatever reason the home is up in a fire, as long as that structure is out there, there are other factors that are affecting it other than blasting. Just typically here in Central Texas, we have a lot of soil sediment, we have a lot of flooding, we have a lot of drought. These are the main things that we bring up. There are other tiny other factors to keep in place, but when you combine all of that together through the house's standpoint, or for the house's lifespan, comparing all of that will naturally occur versus the minimal effect we're seeing here at the homes throughout Garden Ridge, that comparable value shows it's certainly the house is feeling more naturally than these added vibrations are coming through to it. That's what that statement means. And when you look at it, okay, yeah, I bought this house 3 years ago, and I'm noticing all these blasts going in there. When you compare that house was probably built 10 to 15 years ago, to feel these minimal effects, a lot of that damage or just normal wear and tear on a house naturally occurring is of greater damage than what we're going to see through blasting. That's what that page is supposed to illustrate. Now, to this presentation, this has been reviewed by the Quarry Commission several times. Please do take a time to review, that's fine. The only additions I've made was I was able to actually get the files on here with the shake table, so that now is working. And I put a final slide on there is Pat Peaton's contact information. When this first went to be reviewed, it still has LB's information on there as well, but now Pat has an entire slide to him as to how to get a hold of him. Okay? Those would be the only additions I have. Now, Nancy, we did send a copy of this on a Dropbox. You have
Yes.
access to that.
Yes, we have
Okay.
access to it.
Very
Yes.
good. Okay, so now City of Garden Ridge now has a copy of it. And it's my understanding that that presentation will be brought onto the website. Correct?
Yes.
Very good.
Once it's approved by the commission to bring it forward, approved by the commission so we can post it on the website.
Understood.
Another thing as far as education materials go, we had discussed at the last meeting to get what we were calling at the time a dictionary. We're going to reform that word instead of dictionary to glossary. And we are still working on that. We want to have a booklet of 50 to 100 common used blasting terminology with some graphs and charts included in there as well. We are still working on that, but in the interim, I do have these pamphlets I'll pass out.
Thank you.
And I count pretty good, don't I?
Yeah.
The new procedure, what we're looking to do here is when a concern comes across us, a new concern comes onto the radar from Pat's office at Hanson. He is going to reach out with a personalized letter. He's going to include that pamphlet plus another pamphlet from Hanson. He's going to have my business card, Dave's business card, and Pat's card, all in one letter. They'll be personally sent out to the people that have concern. Not only do we reach out to them, but now they have the information tangible in their hands. I think that's the new approach Hanson's really looking to go on this. And again, hopefully by May, when we can get this glossary approved, the procedure, as I understand it, is what? We get a box of 50 or 100. We bring it here to the Quarry Commission when a concern comes in. It'll be up to the commission to dispense these glossaries throughout the community as concerns come in. Like I said, 50 to 100 common blasting terms with charts and figures. So it's almost like, here's the information, read it yourself. You've got our contact information to go over it more thoroughly. Yep.
One of the things that, when I was going through this, that I noticed, you give the Bureau of Mines studies, and you reference those and describe what the results were. But there was no date on the study. Was that the study in like 1936 or something like that?
No, the USBM study, and I should know this off the top of my head. I believe it's 1986 is when that study was performed. I will confirm that, but it's in the mid to late 80s when that was done.
And it was 1986 in what state or states?
Boy, I do believe that was in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania?
But I need to look that up
Okay,
before, but
good.
I'm pretty sure that's okay.
Other comments, questions?
Well, I don't know whether the fact that we've been doing this for many years and we already have a sufficient cognitive background on this and we understand it all. But for me, I thought this was an excellent summary, answering all kinds of the anticipating those questions
Sure.
that people are going to ask, and I think we can reference this on our, I guess, the Quarry Commission website. Is that what?
That's how I believe this will be. It'll be a link.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent tool. I really do.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
And I know I've asked this 1,000 times, but I like to keep bringing it up because I want to make sure I understand it. And we are saying that there's a correlation between the study done 35 years, 40 years ago, and the location as far as the land on which it was conducted, the structures on which it was conducted,
Sure.
and the land and structures in Garden Ridge? Or
Yes.
is this supposed to apply to anywhere in the world?
The USBM is a national standard.
Right.
Other countries do have different standards. But I do get this question a lot where they say, well, you're referencing a study in 86 or in the 80s. It's 2021. Why has it not been updated? And the answer to that question really is because when that study was done in the 80s, that Z-curve was referenced the two most fragile and common used building materials, which is plaster and drywall. So the question I ask to anyone that says that up, since 1986 to 2021, how much has changed in how we make plaster and drywall? As long as those two elements remain consistent and constant, the study will hold up, regardless of our soils of where we're at, because those are the two most delicate things that could be damaged.
And then in the building community, the drywall that you got in 1986 is similar enough to the drywall of today that it's
Correct.
comparable. Okay.
And again, I'm not a builder, but I am going to hopefully assume They certainly haven't made an inferior product since the 80s. I'm hoping they're advancing their building materials.
I
But
would hope
yes.
so too, like building materials, paper that it's made with, stuff like that. The cements, the
Certainly,
lines, the
yeah.
lines.
the builders
It's not
wouldn't,
improved.
No, it's not. In fact, it was, I think, I want to say 2 years ago, there was a big lawsuit because a Chinese company was making drywall that was significantly less able to handle wear and tear to the American product, and they were going cheap to try to make it work, and the materials they were using were inferior. And it created quite a problem, and obviously I've not heard it since, so I don't know if it's still a problem or not, but they were making inferior drywall.
Again, it's under the assumption we're using the most high, drywall and plaster that's approved by engineering specifications.
But part of the issue also, it seems to me, is that you're taking a substance, drywall, we'll stick with that since we're there, and you are mounting it on a surface. Shut up. Thank you. And you're mounting it on a surface, and I'm certain that if you put drywall on 2 2x4s with an 8-foot span, it's going to react differently than if you put it on 12-inch spans and put 8 studs behind it as opposed to just one. So it seems to me that what is holding everything together, from the fasteners to the studs to the foundation to the attachments of the bottom plates to the foundation to the attachment of the foundation to the earth below, I can't help but feel that if you're telling me that if I get up and really shake something and wobble it back and forth, that it's going to withstand all of these blasts regardless of how it has been built or what it's been placed on, because the reactions are going to be different. The substance is the same. The parts of the property that are being moved are made of the same material, but they clearly give, break, and fatigue under different conditions and situations, wouldn't they?
They certainly do. Drywall and plaster have a much lower tolerance of breakage than concrete does, absolutely. But again, that Z-curve, and through that study, they can reference several different homes that they've tried it on. There are several 2-story homes versus 3 versus 1, ranch houses versus, they did a whole spectrum of homes that were tested on it. Again, drywall and plaster, those are our 2 weakest, which is what that Z represents. The national, that's the criteria that's established. As long as we're plotting below, we're not in the statistical likelihood of damage throughout.
But you understand my concern if you're on a pier and beam versus a slab, and like you say, you're spanning a distance of I don't know how many feet for a wall, maybe 15 or 20 feet even in a long room in a hallway. If it is moving, what is it when if it's racking at different conditions? It seems to me like if you can keep it still on a solid concrete basis, for example, that would not crack near as quickly or as much as one that has one end moving this way and the other end moving opposite. I mean, just like with the shoebox, you twist it, okay, it stays together, but if you push it together, it collapses. Something like that. Wouldn't that, I mean, I guess what I'm getting back to is, does the building code itself need to be looked at for additional protection of substances or parts of it or something like that?
I mean, I can't speak to building codes.
Okay.
That I don't know. This is under the assumption that the residence has passed its engineering, it's insured, right? It's gone through all of those loopholes saying this is a structurally sound residence. As long as we have that stamp seal on there, then this criteria applies. Now, how liberal they stamp it, do the codes need to be adjusted in a way? That I couldn't speak to.
Well, it's just one of those factors that Mike is talking about. I remember when I was shopping for homes, and people would say, oh, and these homes are built on 12-inch, beams or distance between each stud, as opposed to what was it, 16 or 18? The other 16, yeah. And I thought, oh, that's good. This structure is a little more solid, will stand up to rigor, and it would be interesting to see whether that has, you're saying that whether 16 or 12-inch distances between the studs, the study should apply equally on either of those, right?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. Now, as we've said multiple times at this podium, there's a difference with structural response versus damage.
Right.
Okay? Right, that's that fine line we're always trying to define in each of these meetings. Damage, our study is stating that we won't have that. But there could be, given as we've seen in here, whether your house was put on a certain soil, whether it's multiple stories, maybe it's 12 versus 16-inch studs, you could have a response on that that's different than your neighbor's. That could very well be. But the materials of drywall and plaster is what the criteria is based off.
Hey, Nick,
Mhm.
that was like a 30-year study
Yeah.
that had several revisions. When they started out, lath and plaster was the common building material.
Yes.
That's why there's a split in the line, because drywall came out and it blasted right up to the homes. So it was a distance factor. They approached several different homes over 30-plus years.
Correct. Yeah, it is important to note the time scale on the test. It's not like they woke up one day, they had the federal money, and they did it all within a week. It's compiled with using every element of concern that they could have used.
Would you explain that one more time, what he just said about the lath and plaster?
Sure, when they started the study, that was the building material,
Correct.
right? But as the study progressed further, they came out with drywall. So they made that addition to it, which is why on our Z-curve, we don't see a solid line. You have your angle, and then there's that kind of that trapezoid, and then it goes up.
Right.
That dashed line represents our plaster. The solid line on top is your drywall. So the curve reflects both of those materials.
But it didn't reflect the lath and plaster.
No. Plaster is your dashed line. And then the added addition, and if I could pull up, let's pull up the Z-curve. It's on each waveform. It's one of those things you see so much of, right? So here's our USBM.
Yes.
So our plaster is our dashed line. And then going up on top, that solid line is drywall.
Correct.
So you're saying the drywall is actually stronger than the plaster? We would withstand greater forces. Okay.
No, he had used the term, he said that there was a break in the line. When
Yeah,
it changed
the dash
from lath and, I can't say it, lath.
Plaster.
Lath and plaster.
Lath and plaster,
yeah.
yeah. Because I've seen that, I've used that. I don't mean to say I'm that old, but I know what lath and plaster looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But I know what drywall looks like. And so one of these lines represents one over the other?
Correct. The dashed line
Represents?
plaster and lath.
Oh, both of those?
Yes.
Thank you.
The solid line is drywall.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I'm
Mhm.
better now. Sorry.
No problem. Again, that's something that I show up this graph and 9 times out of 10, a lot of people have no idea what it's representing. So it's very, very, very good to go over these.
That's what this was about, is terminology, so.
Exactly. There will certainly be in our glossary, there will be a breakdown 100% of what that's, because that's also in every single waveform that's produced. If you could, Kat, just click on to slide 9. What do we see? There's a Z-curve. Now, it's not a dashed line for plus, and that's just a programming thing, our programmers that put the dashed line in. But that bottom line
It still represents.
still represents plaster, top one drywall.
So, speaking to that format of your document, when you blow blow it up just a little bit? Oh, never mind. Okay, never mind. But just go back to it, if you will. Okay, oh, the other one was great. That one right there is great. So as who will be able to see this information besides us in your report? This idea, this representation?
Again, this will be in our glossary.
Okay.
I'm fairly certain there's a breakdown of the Z-curve in our educational presentation.
Okay. So on the right side is logarithmic. Somebody would have to know that to look at it, because then they would look at it and say, how come the numbers are so weird? You know, it goes 1, 10.
Yeah, well, that's right, the scaling on that. I know I matched this. I had a lot of them. It's me. I know, oh no, it turned on. I make technology cripple.
Oh,
So we-
boy.
That's just what I do.
So we talked about structures.
Nicholas.
Why wouldn't we put the monitor
It is in your-
on the structure?
Very good. So you're saying, and we've addressed this as well, why are they in your yards? Why are they not in the house, right? Because we're trying to get a reading of how the entire house responds to that vibration. If I go up on your bay window set, or if I'm just in your kitchen and I get my vibration reading, it's simply going to say, this is how your kitchen responded. This is how your kitchen floor responded. This is how this archway responded. And I'd have zero information as to, you know, what would be going on with the house at home. Don't ask me what happened on the second floor. I wouldn't be able to tell you what happened in your garage. It's really the area. So we want to monitor outside so we can capture that wave before it starts hitting all of these affected elements within the home. That and the added logistic of actually going into people's private homes to service and install equipment.
Mhm. Yeah, because, I mean, when I feel these blasts, I feel it on the floor as well as I hear it on the walls. So, I mean, that's what's taking the effect of the blast. I know it's the earth moving that's causing that, but, you know, to get some kind of an idea of what, you know, how this Z-curve actually compares to when your actual walls are shaking or when your floor is shaking, vibrating. You know, I don't know, you know, somebody had brought that up before in conversation, one of my neighbors. And, I mean, it made perfect sense, you know, why they wouldn't, you know, wondering why we wouldn't put it on the structure itself versus on the earth.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you know, to define that, right, I mean, we're capturing this wave as a whole, what it hits before it hits the structure. You know, it's a very sophisticated to get it in the entire house movement 100% pinned down directly. You're going to need a seismograph on one wall, and I don't know what the measurement would be on that, but you'd also want to compare that onto the next wall next door. You'd want one on your ceiling, you'd want some on your beams. Certainly want to monitor your foundation. So now you're talking about one house having at least 12 seismographs feeding information that would be just so much easier to know, well, hey, before it got to the house, this is what we were looking at.
Patrick.
Armando has an excellent question, and not to talk about the code, but I think Garden Ridge has probably the best codes in the world. I mean, well, not the world anyway.
Yeah.
In the area, 3/4 inch rebars for foundations. I think Armando's question, the way I perceive it, is how close is the monitor can be to the foundation, not necessarily on the whole house, but, you know, I'm not an engineer. But,
We like
how
to.
close are they usually to the house?
Our preference is to get it as close as we can get to that foundation as we can.
Okay.
But we also want to maintain being in the proper host soil, and we also want to make sure we're not upsetting gardens, and we also want to make sure we have proper sunlight. So bearing in mind all of those elements, typically and then also with this particular quarry, there's a history to take into account. We've always been at those positions. If you tell me here's the Quarry Commission, you say enough of the original spots, I want them exactly at the foundation, we can make that adjustment. They've always been here. When you're talking at the distances we're getting at, I think I'll have to look at a map, but I don't think we're more than maybe, I think Mr. Holly's house is actually, the seismograph's furthest away from that house, because that's behind that utility power line. I'd
That's
estimate
correct.
that's probably
It's-
maybe 100 feet.
From my house,
Yeah, the power line to where the
It's-
seismograph
it's-
is to your house?
it's more like almost 200 feet.
Maybe 200 feet away?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because I've stretched water hose back there.
Sure, and that just comes down to the specific science of it. You know, we're 200 feet away versus the foundation. You know, that wave is going to dissipate in that 200 distance. So we're anticipating it being less at that foundation, but you're right. To get the most accurate read on something, you want it, you know, we do have some projects where it's like a foot away from the foundation. And it's also very, very important to note as well, we don't want anything called reflection. So if I do have a four-walled structure, I want to be mounted on the corner, not the dead center, because that wave will hit the wall and it'll bounce back onto my seismograph and amplify the reading. That wave hits the structure and disperses out, it's going to mess up my reading. So we always center it off the corner best we can. We want the closest corner to the shot. That way we don't have any reflection on the seismograph.
And that's the way it used to be planted. It was basically about 40 feet from the house or so, and then you guys
Sure.
moved it because of legal reasons, and then you moved it again because then you could put it on your property, and so now it's basically 200 feet away from our house, yeah.
And I think, I think I remember doing on-site on your property.
Right.
When I first started coming over here and getting involved.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, construction projects, we do this all the time, or for blasting-related construction projects. So it's not a quarry, but the only way they can get the utility line is to drill holes and detonate the explosive. We do that a lot too. Sometimes those utility lines aren't way in a Garden Ridge quarry pit. They're maybe 60, 70 feet away from a home. So in that regard, obviously, you want to get to that foundation best you can to get the most accurate reading. Not to say that we have inaccurate readings.
But what Mr. Diaz mentioned is, from a very practical perspective and conceptual even, almost goes to the core of the issue. What we're measuring is the effect on the ground, and we're postulating, therefore, the effect on the house. If as long as it stays within ordinance and 8507 limits, nothing can happen to your house. Very sorry, science has proven that. But you're saying that about something you've never, ever, ever tested. Like, say, you could put enough monitors on a 1- or 2-story house to see if that actually is true, right? I mean, wouldn't that settle part of the question, at least for that specific residence at that specific time?
I understand, right, the question. See, the house is, we want to monitor that ground motion on that wave. As long as that house is planted, and we're monitoring in between the shot and where that house is, we want to capture that wave. And we know how that wave is. When we look at TPV and its frequency, we can delineate what type of wave passage, let's call it, through that house, right? That's what we're trying to get at, right? And when we look at that, we're able to tell, well, if we do have a low frequency, we can guess there was some type of movement throughout the house. Or if our frequency is so high, we know the speed of it went so quickly through, we're not anticipating any movement. But yes, to the question of when the shot went off, and I felt my windows rattle and shake, that actual specific number of how much they shook and rattled, we don't necessarily have that quantified. We know we're not at the point where they're going to break. We've detected that we're not at a spot where they're going to break or have permanent damage. But what that number was, correct. We're detecting that wave that hits the seismograph.
But what gets interesting in some of the data is, like we were talking about earlier, you've got a no trigger at 2,900 feet, and at 8,000 feet, you've got a guy that thought his house was going to collapse. I mean, something's weird about that.
That I agree. I agree. I can't conclusively say that. I mean, I know logically the wave's going to lose energy the further it gets. But correct, as far as science says, I need to put a seismograph at that foundation and get a few reads in there before I can say there's nothing happening. I don't understand, is it something, I always hear they comment on the noise, right? And that noise can be jarring, especially if you're not familiar with it. I do understand that. Wow, that's really loud. Now, I heard that loud bang, let me go start looking around. Now you're finding these things that you never saw before. It's almost like a wake-up call that kind of hits. So there could be a little of that. As far as what the science is, the proven method, once we hit that seismograph, I got a no trigger. Unless I'm right there at that foundation, and I was on the call when we took that there. The Thomases did not seem very interested to assist. But that's all I can really say to that, because we're not at that foundation.
I know we have a lot of questions.
On the average, what is it, about 40 feet, 50, 20 feet from the corner?
All of, I want to be, if you let me rule the world, I'd put a seismograph 1 foot away from the corner. 1 foot, 1 foot away. But that's dangerous when you start thinking about people's garden beds. You start thinking about maybe they don't want this big ugly thing there, If we do on-site, on-site monitoring, I could just put a little tiny seismograph there and pull it out at the end of the day.
So your preference is really to get closer to the foundation like Armando was saying?
It's the science of it.
But what is the average now, more or less? 40 feet, 50?
All of the locations legally have been chosen. No, yes. And I think Mr. Holly's is the furthest away, right? Let's all just remember our waves, when they hit that remote, energy doesn't advance, energy is going to decrease. That's the logic of why we have those seismographs there.
I would say yes, mine is the furthest away, but I'm the closest to the blast when it's in that south pit. It's like another 600 feet and then down. And then there's the blast. So 800 feet, it feels terrible.
Okay.
Anyway, and it doesn't matter what size the blast is, it's just when it's in that pit, it's just that way. I have basically, I have a crack in my house that I monitored since it was built. Fortunately, that crack has not grown, and I look at it every time the blast goes off, because that is my gauge. And they've been doing basically good, because that crack hasn't grown.
Well, the other thing too is, these vibrations over time, right? The earth, those vibrations have to cause the earth underneath your house to settle.
Absolutely.
Which subsequently leads to shifts in your foundation, which leads to cracked tiles, cracked floors, cracked walls.
Cracks all over the place, yeah.
Right. So, and this doesn't, this doesn't measure that. You don't know what that sifting motion is doing to the earth underneath your house, which will eventually start causing problems, right? With any foundation, any wall, anything.
And that's true.
You're not taking that into account, right? I mean, sure. I mean, understood. Yeah. Understood. But the thing is there's blasting pretty much every day. Right. There's blasting every day. So that blasting is having some kind of an impact on your soil. And, take into account all the other stuff that goes on with the droughts and the rain, the flooding. All that stuff impacts the soil, but so does to the blasting.
Again, over a long-term period, that's what we're thinking. One, I don't know anyone's foundation that's been around for 5-10 years that doesn't have some crack in there naturally. That's a very common thing to have, right? And expansion is something that could be measured. Okay, the rate at which that they're blasting, we're keeping tabs on that as well. But when you're, again, the common elements that will affect an everyday house, those are showing to be more damaging than these shots that were reported, at the low levels that were received.
I kind of brought that up because I see my son's house in Live Oak, and he's on an expansive clay soil, and it's done major damage where he has to get foundation company in there to jack it up on a hard layer underneath. But I mean, cracks in all the plaster, cracks in the brick, and it's, you know, it's a lot of the homes in that neighborhood have that problem, and they don't have blasting anywhere around them, but it's that clay soil.
So we're back to materials and things of that, so. Do you have anything in your report about materials? Or, you know, the definitions, glossary items, things of that nature?
In this presentation, I don't think we thoroughly go over different building types.
No, not, I shouldn't say thoroughly, but just to bring it to, as an informational thing, to say some materials do this other than lath and plaster and then, you know, like the Z-curve. But you're trying to stay within the Z-curve terminology, is that the idea?
Yeah, I think I have one slide in there that defines, I certainly have one in there for air overpressure, what different decibels do. I think I also have another thing in there that would say the different criteria for some different, from other different building materials.
Could we take a look at that air overpressure report?
It's past slide 21. A little higher. There we go. There you go. That was that slide 15. So here's our plaster on lath, our drywall, our mortar joints, reinforced concrete, vibration standards for it. And what's interesting there is that initial perception being a 0.01. Humans are great seismographs because we can detect vibration at very low levels, but we're actually horrible seismographs because we can't quantify it.
So we can put on a Fitbit and keep track of it or something?
Well, every time it makes your heart jump?
No. So since we're so good, you know, like put the monitor in our pocket or something like that, would that be of any significance? Or, I mean, literally.
You'll feel it, like that graph shows. You're going to feel a vibration at 0.01 inch per second. You'll feel it, no doubt. Now, are you going to be able to stand there, Mr. Holly, when you feel that at that level? You're going to be saying, oh yeah, that's a 0.01 inch per second. You're going to say, well, I felt vibration.
Well, that's why I needed that instrument in my pocket.
Well, you're not in the pocket. You know, the only way you're going to quantify that is with a seismograph on the ground. That's going to give you that value. That's going to give you the actual number that we can use, right?
True, but that's not what I wanted to say either. I wanted to be able to feel it, like he says. You know, I'm in the house. I can feel the blast. I see the blast. When I say I see it, I'm looking at what's moving in the house. I watch leaves on the plant start shaking and stuff like that. I watch windows sort of resonate, if you will. Pictures, you know, move. So, but it's a terrible blast to me, feeling it, but then nothing fell off the wall. No cracks were developed. So that's why I say, what else could someone do? And you're looking at this report, so now how can I look at this report and say that it's good?
I think it's very, very difficult to measure subjectively versus objectively. Because what startles you may not startle someone else.
Hey, Nick.
Yeah.
We formerly tried to study the human response, where they had a slab with a table, setup arrangement, and then same setup enclosed in a house structure, same slab, they induced the same vibration that kept alternating participants back and forth. Each and every case, individuals inside the house seeing things always proceed to higher the same vibration. But it's very subjective to try to put numbers to it. And then RI 8507, to answer Mr. Shand's question about structures analysis, they had it wired up as that test went on over 30 years. They wired the house up, and Diaz, that took into account soils of all different style of houses and everything. Obviously, it wasn't Texas, but in the Northeast, so it was a bunch of soil types that were accounted for. That's why, that's our main guide, this curve.
When you mentioned 8507, wasn't there, I thought there was something in there also that I was reading years ago, whenever we got first into this, and they also measured once a crack began.
Propagation.
Then, exactly, and then the propagation of the crack, and they actually found that they extended, they didn't go, 14 feet, but they went from a few inches to a few more inches over time. So it also suggested to me, well, once there is a weakening, whether it's from the garbage trucks running by and backfires, or whether it's from a 90-mile-an-hour wind or whatever the stresses are on a structure, once you've got one, I'm wondering if successive blasts, when I build in Garden Ridge, I go to the building code, which says in this part of the country, given all we know about it, here are the standard minimum, and by the way, the building codes are absolute minimum standards you can meet. They're not geared to every city. That's why a lot of cities and states have not adopted the international codes, or what used to be the Southern and the uniform. But they say that, based on where you are, like if you're in San Antonio or in Garden Ridge, don't worry about hurricanes. Don't worry about tornadoes. You do not have to build to them. But you go 150 miles, and yes, you will have hurricane, all that stuff. But so once you have the failure, I wonder to what extent would blasting, just like other effects, strong winds, that when we get those winds much higher than we expect, wouldn't those tend to propagate the cracks even more?
That's what I was gonna ask Mr. Hawley, if he's ever looked at that crack 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, when we were 10 degrees out. Hopefully the house was 69, 70 degrees inside. Versus summer, it's 115 out, and we haven't set any houses. Exterior, interior walls constantly pulling. You'll see those cracks actually expand and contract much more than the vibration of the blast.
And it's particularly noticeable around doors and windows.
Yeah. There's a simple explanation for that, because the corner of your door
Right.
forces all the stresses to a perfect structure is a circle. That's why tunnels are circular, dissipate all that energy.
Fortunately, I haven't gotten a millimeter out of that crack.
A millimeter.
Fortunately, I have not. I measure it. I don't look at it, I measure it. I reported it to the contractor when the house was built. He forgot it, so I said, okay. I'm gonna watch this one.
Okay.
But it's there, and it hasn't gone anywhere, thank God. No, I was speaking of this air pressure report.
Oh, okay.
This one here?
Uh-huh. That's our overall tally specific to the site for that. That I don't have, well, that's from our report. I don't think that's not in our presentation.
No, it isn't. So, but on it, on the left side, as you look at it, that's decibel? Like the 140 column?
Right. Yes, decibel on the left, PSI on the right.
Okay. It isn't labeled decibel. It confused me for a while. I thought this was going to be in your report.
Okay.
This kind of explanation of what's going on kind of thing.
All right. Is that an adjustment you want to see?
Why? It's just a heading that's missing. It's there for air overpressure. You got the date down there, which is recognizable, and it does say date, but on the left side where you have the decimals.
Right, but that's not in my presentation. That's correct. That's something I go over day to day with y'all.
Yes.
So as far as programming wise, you want us to throw in a decibel thing on the side?
If everybody's okay with the way it is there, I can live with it, but I looked at that one time and I was saying, well, what's the 120? What's the 130? But that's supposed to be decibels.
dB. Yep.
That's fine, I think it should spell out.
We can make that adjustment. Yeah.
Please.
That pulls from our website. That really should be a simple graphic adjustment.
Okay.
Do that. Yeah.
Anything else? You had mentioned you had hoped that we'd be able to get some sort of approval on your document in the May meeting.
Yeah, we gotta put that together. That's a correlation between Buckley Powder, Vibrotech, and Hansen Surtex to actually draft up this glossary. I would like to, have an approved document, but I don't have anything to show on that tonight. If that's okay, or we can draft it and send it out. It doesn't matter.
No, it wasn't that. It's just doing it in the May meeting. We can't have a May meeting.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I wanted to move on. Any other questions for him?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So. Any grapevines information you need here? Discussion, comments about the grapevine? What's gonna go in it? You need anything? You have stuff?
Cap, you need the grapevine input.
Yes.
Where do you need it?
Yes.
Does the 18th work for you?
Really don't tell them.
It works for me.
Excellent, sir.
Okay. So if I move on to 5E. Future agenda items. Anybody have anything that they would like to hear talked about, discuss, concerns? I still like to continue with the terminology because I think the information that you're giving is good. It's if it can be heard, more people will understand more about what's happening with the blasting, how it's going on, why it's going on, and how they feel about it or not feel about it. So I'd like to continue discussing terminology and terms. Okay? You ready for the next meeting? Okay, our next meeting will have to be in July 12th, 2020. And the reason for that is the city is canvassing the election that's going on in May, and therefore the chambers will not be available for us. Now, if we need to have a special meeting for some reason, I think we can figure out how to make that happen.
Yes.
But right now, the meeting is scheduled for July 12th, 2021, 6 p.m. here. You're gonna be on vacation now.
No, it's a lot.
It's a long way. It's 4 months, yeah. Any problems with that? Can I get a motion for adjournment? No, what? No, it wasn't that.
Can we still, since we're not having the meeting until July, can we still get the monthly blast reports from Vibrotech?
Yes.
We can send those out. Yeah.
Okay.
They will do that religiously, yes.
Okay.
And fortunately, we got this last one for, what was it, February, just late, so it just came in late, but going with July 12th, we might have a better chance of getting it on time for June.
Well, getting those last reports allows us to take a look,
In advance.
see if there's any flags that come up on that.
Real quick,
Yes.
Pat.
If everybody's in agreement, in May, we could meet at the quarry, do an on-site, just behind here, or a new overlook that we're putting in. We could have all the packets printed out. We could just do face-to-face. Not allowed?
Making burgers and hot dogs, so.
Do you realize that
It would have to be open to the public. Would you be able to accommodate?
minutes,
I'm sorry?
somebody has to speak minutes?
Well, yeah,
We won't be there.
and we will be involved with the canvas meeting.
I think we can communicate basically the way we're doing it by internet. Some big problem, you know,
I mean, if there's something arises, we will manage to pull a special meeting together for y'all. That can be easily done. You know, we have also done, in other months where maybe we've had an even and an odd month back-to-back with meetings. So, if y'all,
How does anybody have any comments about that? Do you feel bad, good?
As long as we're receiving the reports, Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
I think it's okay to go ahead, go unless there's an emergency like Nancy said.
so I move that we go ahead and continue with my motion, just leave it to July 12th.
Thank you. I don't think we needed a motion for that, though.
no, you don't need a motion.
But I was looking for one for an adjournment.
Oh, no, you've got citizen comments.
Oh, citizens' comments, I apologize. We have time for that, absolutely.
Should be on.
It's on.
You have to press the hold button. There you go.
By now, thank you. Kay Bauer, 8947 Garden Ridge Drive. I wanted to thank Mr. Hawley for orchestrating the lunar landing module I have in my yard now. And Mr. Larner, I assume it's the same Mr. Larner because he was in a coat, hat, and a mask when he showed up. But he was very informative and very informative and so on, and very timely in putting it in my yard. I would like to ask that it stay more than a month. The reason I requested it in the first place, we've lived there more than 20 years now, and I started noticing, to be honest, I'm not sure, within the last couple months or so, some of the rebar became exposed on our detached garage, which is a very substantial foundation on it, as well as a very substantial foundation outbuilding, if you will, that also was suffering some cracks. So, and that's the first time in 20-some years. And since it's two separate structures, I thought it might be a good idea to watch. And just for the information that was brought up, my meter is only about 4 feet from my house because the placement is ideal. It's morning sun, and it's right on the corner of the affected garage. So I'm anxious to see reports in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's wonderful news. Any other citizen comments? Okay, no other citizen comments?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Oh, got a second. Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
No vote, just adjourn. Okay.
I'm sorry about being late, but there was a package pickup and I had to get it done, and then I had to get the kid back home.